Hey, buddy.
Can you hear the car alarm in my neighborhood that is basically just repeating the pew over and over again from our theme song?
Oh, I was imagining more of like a Dane Cook, like gasoline is my blood, backseats, radial knobs.
I do not remember that bit, but that does sound like a Dane Cook bit.
That was from like the album that everyone liked that Dane Cook did when we were in college.
Well, there you go.
All right. Well, I guess this isn't Meet the Archivists of Comedy.
Were you a Dane Cook fan? I feel like I very quickly skipped from him being very popular to him being universally hated. Like I almost don't remember the time where he had a good comedy career.
The time, well, you remember when he had a good comedy career because it was when you heard of him. And
Right.
then it was like once he was like in Employee of the Month territory where he's like now headlining bad movies, then everyone was like, oh, he's kind of just one flavor of, like, it was like him kind of yelling was his comedy for, at least in the beginning. It was like, you know, Adam Sandler kind of had a shtick that he just sort of kept.
Yeah, he got like 10 years out of Abaduba though. Like legitimately had like a full career of Abaduba, then had like a second phase, and now he's in his third phase, which might be the best phase so far.
Nihilist Sandler, who's an actor.
Yeah, like indie darling, nihilist, gambling addict. I feel like there's not like. Do you remember?
Wait, are we talking about Ivan Toney? Sorry.
I was gonna say maybe we should, but speaking of gambling narcissists, but I was just gonna touch on comedy a bit more since this is totally a soccer podcast. But I feel like, do you remember the like absolute vitriol people used to have for like Carlos Mencia, and then eventually for Dane Cook, and I think for others in there? Are there still comedians that are that hated, or are we just at a point now where everybody just likes the stuff that they like in their own little universe? Like, am I just missing that?
Well, now we have, instead of it being there's one TV channel with one stand-up comedian going, there's niches, and you just follow the people you like. So in a way, who has time to watch comedians that they don't like? But you're right. I'm sure that exists. It just maybe not like when you're just getting exposed to like a couple comedians, especially when they're lowest common denominator comedians to begin with. Yeah. That's like you're on Comedy Central. You've got to appeal to just general America. Whereas your David Crosses and whatnot are like, I'm going to talk to this 7% of the audience. And they're going to love every word that I'm saying. And I can still sell out arenas with that. Or I can sell out big bars, wherever, whatever he wants to do. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure there are people that see Bo Burnham and they're like, I hate this guy. Because he does his comedy in a very particular style, and if like the fast talking subtext isn't for you, you're gonna not like him at all. Are you asking me are there comedians that people don't like? Because I'm gonna say every comedian has people that don't like them.
No, but like, and maybe this is all in my head, but like I felt like there was like this weird. I think that you hit it on the head of like it has to do with the sort of fragmentation of media, but like. There used to be comedians that would be overnight a little bit too famous, like Carlos Mencia, and then overnight everyone being like, no. But I think a lot of it was like, it's like the same reason that I hated boy bands back when I was in high school, partially because they were getting laid and I wasn't. But the other part of it was like, I'm only going to get to watch 10 music videos today, and if 2 of them are Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, you've just ruined 20% of music videos. Whereas like now, like I don't have to care about like BTS or whatever annoying, that kind of music is out there. I just don't have to listen.
There's also the element of, at one point, I want to say most, whether it's your TV show, studio execs, or movie producers, or even the people that, I guess, control the comedy world, the performers, the venue owners, and again the TV broadcasters. Like, there's a certain point where they started realizing, wait, like, we don't always have to talk down to our audience and assume that they're the dumbest. Like, I want to say comedy has done that as well. Like, I think so much of what, like, first of all, Carlos Mencia, didn't he like steal someone else's jokes? And wasn't that kind of one of the big strikes against him, was theft of ideas?
For sure.
But then also, he's someone who would come out and just go, and I apologize for anyone listening.
Oh, no.
But he would go out like, you know what the difference between Latinos and white people are? And like, that would be the entrance to his set. And you're like, I've heard this 8,000 times. You're not telling me anything necessarily new. And then as we wizened up as an audience, it's like, also, you're not telling me anything that's necessarily true either. And there's truth in comedy, right? So, but I would say for your Dane Cooks, it was like, he had a shtick that was funny, but eventually all shticks become annoying. Like, it's hard to reinvent shtick over time.
Yeah.
Your video's frozen. I don't know if you can be nicer to your computer or something.
I am plugged. Yeah, please be nice, computer.
Anyone watch? It's like I'm getting one frame from you every couple minutes. All right, now you're back.
Weird. Sorry.
All right, let's just talk more disparagingly about professional comedians.
Yeah, Dane Cook is listening and hacking me, asshole. I was actually just about to say something nice about Dane Cook too, and that I think of all the like sort of comedians that used to get a lot of hate, I think that he probably could do some good sets, and I think he probably doesn't because he just has a lot of money and a little bit of mental health now, and is like, yeah, that's fine.
So right after I got, I guess, the first or the second COVID vaccine shot, you know, like the one you needed you need 2 quarters to play this game.
Yeah.
I got the second shot and was like, I just missed going to comedy for so long that we went to a place in Hollywood called, what was it?
Was this the place that we were supposed to go, the Largo or whatever?
No, not the Largo. This is like Comedy Store or something like that. I can't remember. Or maybe it was the Hollywood Improv, but like it was going to be just unknown number of stand-up comedians, and we went there, and like there was a couple of ones that maybe you had heard of before, but Dane Cook was the surprise headliner, and that's kind of something where you're like both like, oh, I know him. But you're also like, oh, am I gonna not like this? Because you remember liking him when you were 19, and now you're 37, and you're like, how old must he be now?
Yeah.
But this was his first performance since a pandemic happened, and instead of like busting into like an hour or a half hour of like very shticky, like funny but like kind of noise-based comedy, he just like spoke very candidly about how tough like his like mental health experience had been over the last, I guess, like year and a half or year and change. And like a few of the things he said were funny, but it honestly felt like we were just talking with someone who was just bearing his soul. And by the end of that, I was just like, fuck, do I like Dane Cook as a person?
Wow.
And I think that I wanted to tell you that because we were just sort of being like, yeah, Dane Cook, he just like makes noise and does the car as gasoline as my blood bit. And like, that was funny in the moment, but like audiences evolve seemingly, or understandings of audiences evolve. And
yeah,
even performers can evolve. They can involve. Not us. We haven't evolved.
No.
But you can evolve.
We're very involved.
Wow, we're 10 minutes in, not a talk of the devils.
That was a tight 10. That was a tight 10, as they say in the comedy business.
Loose lecture.
You want to go first, Mr. Silverware Holder?
Yeah, I think I should talk. It's my turn. So, so United won the Carabao Cup. A cup that in the days of Fergie, our fan base would be like, let's punt this shit so we can focus on the real stuff. Like, play the kids, play whatever the weakest legally allowable lineup would be. If we lose, we don't care. If we win, LOL at you. Now, considering the homeward bound journey that my club has been on for the past, decade and a half, Chance, Shadow, and Sassy are very happy to win the Carabao Cup, the smallest of the cups, the first cup that is played to completion in the football calendar, and we beat Newcastle 2-0.
Completed early.
Yeah, we finished that competition. We finished all over 11 Newcastle players by doing our best Newcastle impression, getting a goal or two early, and then just not allowing you to play football for the rest of the time, just ending the game.
Can I just say that I'm equally impressed and not at all surprised that you know every character in the Homeward Bound lineup?
Wilfred Brimley.
Did you have the VHS of that?
Or is your memory of course. Good? That was one of the approved films that were democratically chosen by one older brother and two younger sisters. So it was that and the entire Olsen twins back catalog, which I know way too much about.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
No Star Wars. Nothing like that was permitted. Always lost that vote 1-2, shockingly.
Congratulations on the cup win. I thought that was going to be a tough one against Newcastle. And I also thought that it was very funny. This is a cup that I have very little experience with, and Arsenal, frankly, have very little experience with. We always think that we're going to have something better to do, and we sort of just bow out of this competition early. And then in many seasons, we look back and I think, it probably would have been nice to win a major trophy, even if it is the least major of the major trophies. So Arsenal have won this one very little as far as big teams go. And so I don't think I've ever actually watched someone lift this cup. I just sort of read about it in the newspaper. And I think it's so hilarious that this cup is not the right size. Do you look how small it is compared to the other cups? I'm like, come on, you can afford the aluminum that goes into making a normal size trophy league cup. But
is it almost like the other cups? Like the other cups are easy there, buddy. You're not a World Cup. You're not a European Cup. You're not a Champions League trough bucket.
I think that a lot of the bullying probably comes from the FA Cup, because the FA Cup deep down is insecure because it's only one notch above it in the hierarchy. And I would even go far
it is a notch above it, because
it is a notch above.
It's a bigger competition that more teams participate in.
More teams participate. And I think the weird, I don't know, there's an economy that goes behind all of it too, because the reason that nobody cares about the League Cup also, beyond the history of it and the tradition of it and the prestige,
because we all play each other already twice.
Well, that, and there's just not that much money involved in winning it. So whereas the FA Cup, it's way less than you would think. It's only a few $1 million, if I remember correctly, but it's still enough that, especially when you get towards the business end, you want to win a few $1 million. Why not?
And the Carabao Cup is even less than that, right? It's a few $100,000 for the whole team.
Is that it? I thought it was at least.
Maybe it's $1 million.
Yeah, I figured it'd be at least seven figures, but it's when you think about it, that's nothing compared to the work you have to do to get there.
It's an 85th of a Harry Maguire. It's just an H.
League Cup winners receive 100,000 pounds of prize money.
So divide that. Maybe I would just give all that to Garnacho and say, "Have a good weekend, buddy."
That's literally if that is a week's wages, then you're not breaking even, because that's one player's weekly wage.
That's a fifth.
I guess you get to keep all the money.
It's a fifth of a Ronaldo per week.
I suppose you get to keep all the money you made along the way. And in a sense, the real treasure and the real cup was the friends you made along the way. But goodness.
I think it's really more I think they're legally bound to compete in it. It's definitely winning it for money is not the case for sure. And it seems like for us, the narrative was just about like, let's practice winning something. Like, let's practice, I can't remember if it was either Casemiro or someone paraphrasing Casemiro were like, finals aren't for playing football. Finals are for winning finals. Like someone said something like that. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, where it's like the matches during the rest of the season are entertainment because if you do your thing and you lose, there's still 37 more opportunities to get it right. Like this is, why are you here if it's not to win this? Like you should just throw the kitchen sink at winning, or don't be there. And that's it. Go ahead.
I was going to say that I was going to totally digress here and basically just say that I think it resets the clock on, like, it quite literally resets the clock on how long it's been since you've won a trophy. And then I think it keeps you from turning into like your friend who hasn't had sex in a long time. And like now every date, you know what I mean? Like every date becomes like higher pressure of like, God, it's been a year and a half. Like, what are the odds that this time it's going to be like the one? And it's like, I think even though it's like a small cup, it's like on some level, no one can say that United haven't won silverware recently. And then that keeps the pressure off the team. And like speaking as a team where we had a 9-year dry spell, or was it 9-year dry spell? Like, it's really nice just to like not have that be another piece of weighting that is on the shoulders of your team. So I feel like congratulations, as you said, just another sexual metaphor for this cup. Boom.
The cup size is just fine, thank you. It's big enough to be
a
cup.
B cup. It's a P cup.
It counts, okay? You can see all of the happiness and joy it brought to so many people the other day. So size, big enough. Yeah. Secondly, it's really rich having you describe that to me as my happily married friend with multiple children. I love hearing you tell me about single desperation. I love hearing you explain that to me. It's like you're going as me for Halloween is like basically
my Schuyler cosplay. No, you have not spent 9 years in the wilderness of not winning a trophy.
Or how about Newcastle's like it was the 1960s, I think.
No, really? Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was the narrative. It was like last time Newcastle United won a trophy. I'm sure there's going to be some fun Wikipedia hack. 1955.
Newcastle, yeah. They have an Inner Cities Fairs Cup, which I would like to say is a very, very big trophy, considering that's one of the few European trophies that Arsenal have ever taken home.
I've never heard of it before, and I read about soccer a lot.
It is a weird trophy in that, and I only know this because Arsenal have one, and it's sort of important to us because we don't have a Champions League trophy, we don't have a Europa League trophy, but it actually kind of was a major. It's just they kept changing the format of the European competition, and that one went away relatively quickly. But it was probably similar to like a Europa League level competition. But nobody.
I'm gonna fight you. I'm gonna fight you on that. Any competition that doesn't exist anymore at all doesn't matter.
But they've changed. Like, what about the Cup Winners' Cup? Like those ones are totally
doesn't, because I don't think any like single or 2 match cup counts as a cup. For example, I would argue that the Supporter Shield isn't a cup, and that's why it's a shield.
I guess I would agree that it's not a cup. I mean, but are you also saying it's not a trophy?
Literally, a bowling trophy is a trophy. The question is, does it matter?
By the way, the Cup Winners' Cup that I'm talking about is not that Super Cup bullshit. That it's like there used to be a thing that was kind of like it used to be there was sort of like the Champions League. There's like the top tier. I forget what it was called of like European competition, and those were the people who had won their leagues. No, and then there was also okay. It sounded like you were. I just think if it doesn't with the Super Cup.
If it doesn't exist anymore, it kind of is for all intents and purposes irrelevant, right? Like it's not something that anyone can ever win again. It's not something where current current performance really matter. Like, it doesn't matter who won the Intertoto Cup to me. It doesn't.
I agree with you to a certain extent. I think with the one exception of like European continental club competitions, we've only had the Champions League and the Europa Cup in their current form for a couple decades now, 3 decades. So like,
do you care? Do you care who wins the ICC trophy?
What's that?
It's the Visit America preseason tour.
Yeah, like the fake like preseason trophies.
No, but you just said fake. Those. You just said fake.
Who says
fake. Who says what is fake or what is real? Is a fetus
Podcasters
a life?
Like us.
Or
I'm trying to litigate it right now.
The Catholic Church says a cup's not a cup unless
I think that if what you won was the highest or the second highest, if it was like, you know, one of the very most prestigious cups of its kind at the time, then I think it matters. You know what I mean?
I think the reason I'm saying this is I think the Carabao Cup is the lowest possible it matters trophy, but it matters the least.
Yeah. I would agree with that in terms of like the cups that are currently being contested right now. But if you're going back in history, like for instance, let's say,
and this is like not that much. Going back in history, money was less, globalization was less, competition was lower. I think the best teams from now wiped the floor with the best teams from yesteryear.
That is a truism, but I still think that but that doesn't mean that like the teams that won the league in the 80s, that doesn't mean that they don't matter. Like the old competitions matter because you're grading on the curve of time. Like it was there were no time machines. They're all teams from the 80s playing each other.
If they all equal one unit, though, I contest that. Like, if the team that wins something in the 50s did it with half the players were drunk and the center backs weighed 240 pounds.
Right. I mean, there's a reason that the old Etonians are not considered part of the Big Six anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I get that, like, there's a recency bias to this. But I'm saying that, like...
But it's not just bias. It's not just bias, though, because there's a recency of athletes being top-tier athletes, even.
But that's not even why it matters. It just matters because, like, ultimately you have to win recently for us to keep caring about you. You know what I mean? Otherwise, like, you're Blackburn Rovers, and it's like, okay, cool, that was neat that you did that. That is a neat piece of soccer history. We've moved on. We're not going to see you anymore. But, like, the point that I'm going to make, and I'm going to interrupt you if I have to this time, but the Super League, it almost went through. And if the Super League had gone through, then suddenly the highest European competition would not be the Champions League. I don't think that it means that the Champions League didn't matter. I don't think that you like get to just discount those. I think that the Champions League was still the best competition of its kind at the time. And I think that similar things could be said for like the Cup Winners' Cup and some of these weird cups that we don't have anymore because they had to develop that infrastructure on the continent. And like if you were champions of Europe, if you lifted a cup, if you beat Barcelona, if you beat, the Ajax teams of that, I don't know. Those are big. Like if you could beat those sides, then I think that, I don't know. I think those are worthwhile cups. I think they're a completely different caliber than the ICC and the Audi Cup and all that.
I love how this is the most riled up I've ever gotten you on this podcast. And we've talked about like so much fucked up shit. And this is
the most wrong you've ever been.
I'm like doing improv jazz flute to like get you riled up. I'm like, I hear you talk about like some cup that matters to Arsenal I never heard of. I'm like, I'm going to step on that dick right now.
I found an Inner Cities Fair cup and I peed in it.
I don't give a fuck about most of this. I'm just gonna keep going until you either agreed with me or got really mad and yelled at me. I didn't have an end goal for that. So yeah, I think
so in a way we both won.
In a way everyone has lost. Yeah. But I think from back to the Carabao Cup, so we can move on from it. Like I'm happy we won something. I'm happy to see that Ten Hag can get this team to play different ways based on the occasion. Like back like Fergie used to do. To live in that era again. So I think that's been enough, and we're switching it up to wiki Arsenal.
a game that I could not see because I live in the worst country in the world to watch English football in, England.
I was like, Iran.
I honestly think that I would have an easier time in Iran watching that game than I would have in England. I mean, not
because you're a straight man.
Yeah, straight men are really having problems in Iran. The woke mob is out there.
The straight man is who would probably be able to watch the most football. Just think about it. Chew on that for a minute.
Straight.
Not you, but like the audience. You can move on.
Yeah, there was definitely a joke there that flew right over my head.
It wasn't on a magic carpet. Was that the one?
I did just recently rewatch Aladdin with my kids, and on Disney Plus, they now have like a quick, like it's like a whole screen of text. I wanted to pause it and like screenshot it, but my kids wanted to watch the movie, and it basically said, "The following is a very racist movie based on a bunch of stereotypes. No one should." And then at the end it says, "Enjoy the show," and then it goes right into the movie.
But that's true. It is. All of that stuff is racist. Like even the fucking thing I just said was racist. But like I was, of course, parodying the oppressive government of Iran. Yeah. But like, isn't Lion King even racist?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, the animals are talking with accents. Like, there you go.
Yeah. It wasn't that a Chris Rock bit where he said, like, I love animation, man. Like, if you're a black man, you can play any character from a zebra to a monkey.
Jesus Christ. I mean, truth in comedy, though. Because
it's like, somehow they're very, I don't know.
This episode has been mostly about meta discussion of stand-up comedy. None of it's really been about football.
Oh, gosh.
And there's been like 2 or 3 cancelable bits.
Yeah. I think only you're canceled though.
All right, go ahead. Do the rest of the show yourself, you asshole.
And I think the Inner Cities Fair is back on the menu, baby.
Wait, is it Inner Cities Fair?
I think that's what it's called. The Inner Cities Fairs.
Sounds like the Inner City's unfair trophy because I didn't get to participate in it, and neither United was not invited.
I was thinking about making an inner city joke and connecting it to the Chris Rock bit, but I don't want to get canceled too, so I'm just going to skip that.
So you're unwilling to hashtag me too my cancellation?
If we've had one host already get a red card, the last thing we need is another, Schuyler. I'm playing a man down as is.
I'm the Casemiro of hosts. You're right. All right. So what is your understanding of what happened during this match? Seeing as you couldn't watch it and I could.
It looks like both teams were a bit lackluster. I saw a stat that the lowest XG that's been posted in the Premier League was Leicester in this game. They only managed one shot, and it was from like 30 yards out, and it wasn't even like a particularly good attempt. So everyone seems to think that Arsenal is sort of very much in charge of this game. But ultimately, when you win 1-0, like, I don't know, there's always that moment where you could slip on a banana peel or something happens, and I don't know. It didn't happen. So I'm glad that it didn't happen, but I think that we probably could have been more convincing against a sort of lower mid-table side, what Leicester is this year. What
was the final? What was the final?
It was 1-0.
Oh, the one on the weekend.
Right.
My head was that, wait, you couldn't watch the one on the weekend or you couldn't watch the one today?
Both. So the one on the weekend, like, the Leicester one, that one kind of made sense within their dumb rules because, okay, if you're saying on the weekends people could go to the games, so we're going to black them out at 3 p.m. so you can't like just sit in the pub and watch it. You have to go to the game. Like, I kind of get that logic. The reason that the Everton game was blacked out, which was happening on a Wednesday evening, so I was actually thinking, oh, this is going to be one of those midweek games that's on Amazon Prime. Sweet. I'm going to like have some cookies and ice cream and watch it at my house. And
you're going to get Prime delivery for the...
yeah. But Instead, they said, well, this game was originally scheduled on the weekend at 3 p.m., so therefore it cannot be televised in the country. And it's like, it's on Wednesday night. I mean, and it's amazing when you look, like, it's something like probably 2/3, or no. Yeah, probably about, I don't know, probably about half to 2/3 of the matches in any given week are the middle time slot kickoff on the weekend. So they're basically just saying, we would like to make half as much money as this league is worth by not televising these games. It's insanity. Or at least, like, if you really wanted to, like, milk the TV money and fuck the fans over, which of course is what they want to do, then at least let them televise it in the pubs. Like, even if people can't have it at their house, now you're making those pub licenses that they sell for a king's ransom worthwhile, because, like, I would have to go out and I would have to buy a couple, like, $6, 6-pound beers, to make it worth the pub owner's while. But to just not show it at all is a fucking, I mean, so including the last two, 5 out of the 6 Arsenal games, like, so the next 3 out of 4 will also not be shown. So it's like I'm in the middle of this title run in England, and it should be, like, amazing, but, like, they're blacking out the games to get people to go to the stadium, which, by the way, you can't get tickets to. I mean, like, I looked today. I was like, you know what? It's a Wednesday night game. Maybe I am an Arsenal member. Maybe somebody's selling them.
Does blacking out the game for a broadcast slot also mean that there's no archived not rebroadcast, but like after
replay or whatever,
like an hour after the match ends, or maybe even less, I can just go to the app and watch match replays, like watch yesterday's matches. Like, can you watch it archived, or is it like forbidden for your eyes to see it, like Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant?
I believe I could still watch the replay, but it wouldn't be until basically like the next day. And even that, you would either need to have the subscriptions. You would need 3 subscriptions to watch all the games that are available. And even then, you can't watch the games that are unavailable because they're unavailable. And so you'd still have to be spending like about £75 a month to watch all of the half of the games that they're actually going to show, which is insane. And then to get the replay. And then I think Arsenal actually posts replays of our matches the day after on the website, but I don't know.
The thought that the local people there feel a passion about this game and about their club that, I gotta say, meets or possibly exceeds our passion. And our passion's pretty nuts. But like when it's everything about your life, it's like woven into the fabric of the fucking seats on the tube. Like, how are people not angrier about, like, I hear about blackout issues here with like baseball. Who gives a fuck about baseball?
Right. Right.
Like, why aren't there like parliamentary buildings like on fire with angry mobs? I'm not suggesting that again, but I'm with what I know about the most diehard of football fans is that they get violent for way less. So like, how has this not been something that's been confronted with a massive public outcry and like dealt with?
It's a great question. I think
we got a football regulator. We got a football regulator coming in.
It does, like, if anything, I'm surprised. It seems like low-hanging fruit for one of the political parties to snatch, to be like, look, we spend an awful lot of resources, with police and public transportation and all the various things that we do to make these games happen. You're going to let us watch it, and I think that would be a very popular move among football fans. But I think the real answer is that it's never not been this way. And almost every league in the world, like certainly American sports, had very stringent blackout rules for some time until it's kind of like we were talking about before of like, there's a point where greed takes over. What was it? What was the choice before? Greed or I forget. We had a thing going.
It's greed normally wins.
Yeah, like greed wins in America for sure.
Sometimes greed and logic do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the thing that would make you more money is also the thing you should do because everyone's asking you to do it.
100%. And this is one of those times where it's like, you're leaving money on the floor so that you have the right to make me more miserable so that theoretically I'm going to go to games more, but the stadium is sold out, or it's like, at least like even when the NFL still had these rules, and I remember it like affecting things sometimes, it was at least like sort of logical where they would say like, all right, if the Atlanta Falcons have a home game and they haven't sold out their home stadium, then we're not broadcasting it in Atlanta. They're not saying like no one in the entire country gets to watch the game, or like if it's the Falcons playing the Packers, no one in Green Bay gets to watch this game because we need, because those people like are just pop on down to the stadium in downtown Atlanta. It doesn't make any sense.
But they also make it sound like this isn't the most popular sport in the planet and the most popular league on the planet with a whole tourism industry around people just going there to watch the matches. Like, if they think any of these stadiums aren't gonna, fill up, right. I think that's just nuts, right? Like, the smaller teams have smaller stadiums.
Yeah.
And like I just, it blows my mind, especially when you consider the thought of like a Premier League app cuts out all middlemen who profit from broadcast streaming. Like, the Premier League would just have their own set of commentators, their own sort of graphics package, their own like little fake studio. Those are sunk costs. And then every dollar that comes in is just like, after they've paid their server costs, is profit. Like, for the greediest league in the greediest sport in the planet, it's like, is it just that the people that run that shit are just too old to understand what they don't understand? Like our legislators here don't understand about the internet because they're all old fucking geriatrics who don't get technology. Like, is that the issue? Because greed should be improving the UX right now.
I think the one problem with greed in this sense is like, if you're looking for a bad example of greed, it would be like feudal societies of like, like Monty Python and the Holy Grail kind of shit, where there's a bunch of people out slapping mud. And it's like, that is the kind of like greed that well, it's like, because there's, you have the Football League that controls the League Cup, and those rights are different than the Football Association that controls the FA Cup, and they definitely don't get along with the European Union of Football Associations that controls the. So I think that's one of the innate problems of being a football fan, is that I don't actually give a fuck about any of those organizations, but the idea that they're ever going to work together to make some sort of thing called like the football app that I can download and watch all the football on, or more specifically in my case, and I think this is probably not true. But it's
like the NFL. What's the thing? The package called like NFL
Game Pass
or a game? Is it Game
something?
Pass?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe both of those. But yeah, it's
but
you have those, and you get to watch everything. It's great.
If it's just the 38 Premier League games,
that would be a massive step up.
Right off the bat, that works. But then all you've got to do is like, if you have the rights to. Would it be that they would buy the rights to the FA Cup, the League Cup, and in a crazy scenario, the Champions League, and then it would just be a more expensive price, but it is a one-stop shop? Like, just having, even if you're spending the same amount of money you currently spend watching football, to have it all be in one place and to not have to play guessing games, and it's just wherever you are, you're watching the games. Let's say $300 a year.
Yeah, even that is like, a lot of people would balk at that price, but when you think about it, like,
you're just dividing it up.
Yeah,
you're already spending that, and I don't know. I think just the league doing it would be smart.
Yeah, like, how are they not? How are they not?
Because they keep being locked into this cycle of like, last time we negotiated broadcast rights, we got X. Now we're getting 1.5X the next time. And so they just stay stuck in that system because the money keeps going up.
Right.
But it'd be EA Sports saying, we're done paying FIFA for the name FIFA, levels of either bravery or ineptitude to break away from that teat.
Yeah. I think in the long run, it would be the right move. And, there's probably some sort of hybrid model that would probably work really well. I mean, because if you, like, I have the NFL Sunday Game Pass, and when you watch it on there, you're not watching NFL Sunday Game Pass broadcast. you're watching CBS, Fox, NBC, whoever's playing it elsewhere, and so like everybody's still sort of wetting their beak. It's like, but it's like you're saying, where it's like
because every NFL game has a local
be a
feed.
fan of this, yeah, like I don't know.
How
It's a shame.
Was there a feed of the Arsenal match that other people were getting to see then? I'm guessing there must have been.
So yeah, like that's the other sad thing about it, is that if you're in basically anywhere except England or anywhere except the UK, then of course you're able to watch it.
Yeah,
and so
then
the
exists.
other thing that right, and then the other thing that they're creating there is like, okay, so you're gonna broadcast this game everywhere else, and you're just gonna assume that none of the tubes are gonna connect back to people who want to pirate this game. So it's like you're creating this gigantic piracy economy here for what? Like, just take our money, you assholes.
Since Spotify has come out, have you had to pirate a song? Like, I haven't had to pirate a single song when the price point was right and the user experience is great. It's like, okay, piracy is more difficult and annoying and risky than just paying you the simple amount and using your shit.
Or using it for free and listening to the occasional ad. Like, that's also like a very good deal. I did that for a while.
And that ad is you paying for it just differently. That there's still money changing hands.
The only piracy that I have done is like bands that have unreleased material that I would like to hear. I've done that. So basically, like, if there's something that's not on Spotify, but it's kind of hard to find that stuff. It's like or like I've done stuff that isn't exactly piracy, but it's like I'm looking for like a dubstep mix that came out in 2006 that I like, or it's just weird and esoteric. But no, why, like, make it easy? Like it does. You were talking about this earlier in a sort of tangential way, but you were mentioning the regulators in Congress who are old and don't understand the internet. Like, imagine if you had faithfully followed your team. You were a till I die kind of person, and you're getting close. You're getting close to the die part of it. Let's say, let's say that you're like, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. You've been following your team forever, and this is like this is your little joy. It must be impossible for people that are used to just flipping on the TV and having the game there. It must boggle their minds to try to like think about different apps and downloading this or that, and which channel is this competition on, and oh yeah, they've actually changed these competitions since the 80s when you were really up on it, pops. And it's like, it's sad. It's like it becomes I don't know, it becomes like a legitimate accessibility issue. I don't know, there's just so many levels that it's wrong.
The innovation, it seems like, is really slow with sports leagues in general compared to other companies. One, feels like other companies have to innovate or die because they don't have a built-in audience of idiots who are willing to hand them money no matter what the product is like, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, they know, even with this shitty ass rule that they've got in place, you're still gonna spend as much money as you were gonna spend on Arsenal. You're still gonna show up to support them. How do they lose by abusing the fan here? Because it is a little bit of an abusive relationship. Because they know we're not going to go anywhere else. Like, where you're going to go is kind of what each league and each sport says to you. Like, think about, just let's leave soccer for a second. All that bullshit with the MLB owners, like, was it 2 years ago, a year and a half ago? Like, what a middle finger to every fan who's ever gone to a baseball game or spent money on baseball or played baseball. That whole like, we're only making hundreds of millions, help. Like that message to fans who have spent all of their income on a sport they're passionate about.
Yeah.
It feels like it's like the leagues don't often do the right thing until they're forced to. And soccer is no exception. Like, how much sexual abuse and misconduct is only getting sorted out because of social media and grassroots journalism right now. Like, no one will change shit until they're forced to. Speaking of changing shit until we're forced to, actually, I'm going to switch the order here a little bit, Jeff, and talk about the Glazer sale or no sale of United, because it feels like there have been a lot of conversations about, and a lot of those conversations about like who can or should be allowed to own any club, much less pieces of history like any of these older original clubs. The potential introduction of a British government-based football regulator. Is there a different word that's been getting thrown around? I feel like I might be saying the wrong specific vocabulary.
No, I think you have it more or less right, and I also think there's not a lot of specifics out there, right, for you to be screwing up at this point. It's still sort of a nebulous idea, but.
And I also am not in Parliament or anything, so I pretty much am behind the eight ball already for understanding what's going on in UK government. But like the thought that only certain types of people should be allowed to own a club. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think that it becomes, if it's done well, it could be the best thing that's happened to English football in a long time. If it's done poorly, it could, you're just sort of, instead of having one group of assholes in charge, you have a different group of assholes in charge, So I think I like the spirit of where it's coming from. I like the idea that the fans are going to have more say. I like the idea that they're going to keep teams from moving their clubs. I like the idea that they're going to, put in more protections for fans. I do think that like the ownership one is an interesting one where as these clubs get more and more expensive, you go from what was already a relatively limited pool of owners who have, hundreds of millions of dollars to being an infinitesimally small group of people who have $3, 4, 5, 6, $7 billion to spend on
2-3 dozen people.
Right. And then, so if you become picky and choosy about like which ones, like how do you make that decision? Because pretty much everyone at that level of wealth is a criminal, in my opinion. So,
right. But don't you think it's kind of interesting though, how it's like, what country the people are from does feel like it is part of the conversation. I can see through the transparency of the Qatar bid, or not the trend. I can see transparently through sort of how they're positioning the Qatar bid. It's the Qatari government. It's the people running Qatar that are doing this. But you also kind of hear this undertone of like, because they're from a part of the country we don't like, they shouldn't be allowed to own a club.
There's a xenophobia about it where you're like, well, this doesn't make everything that the Qatari government has ever done okay, but like also you should not be dressed as an oil sheik in the protest. Like that's also fucked up. Like
it's interesting because like what's best for the club and what's like ideal in like a modern, let's say, liberal society might not be in exact alignment with each other, right? Like something that might be best for the club might kind of be a racist or xenophobic idea. And how do you balance that out with your own personal morals? Like for me,
I'm not sure if I can understand the racist or xenophobic thing.
Let me Jim Ratcliffe. We don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy. He could be a bad. He was apparently, from what I have read, part of the whole like Brexit movement. He's not that far from being like a person who has his own personal beliefs. Might be like pretty Trumpy. So like, but for us to be like, yay him, he can do it. Like he's not like he's an upstanding individual. It's like we've just drawn the line at certain cultural differences. Like all the people are problematic, but some of the problematic is white. And like, I'm not saying that I feel that way. I'm saying I'm perceiving this to be a big part of the conversation. My ideal is not possible. My ideal is like if you have a 600 million fans and we all kicked in a few bucks, I feel like we could buy this club.
Right.
That's my ideal, is the German system. That's not going to happen. It's too late. And so when we're talking about like a British government regulator, are they going to like take clubs away from the people that own City and Newcastle and potentially even United's brand new owners? If that goes, because could there be a world where it goes through and they just say, we're taking back effectively private property that you purchased with money.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting precedent of that is not that far in the rearview mirror.
Chelsea.
If you look at what happened to Chelsea, exactly.
But what made that okay or allowable? Was it because of war? Was it like,
right? Like, it's not racism, but maybe xenophobia. Like, I think there is an element of that where it was like, because they weren't the only people that were like Russian plutocrats that had ties to club, like Everton,
Uzmanov,
right?
Yeah, like
there's formerly of Arsenal, but because they were the ones that were so publicly associated, and they were Chelsea and they were the Russian club, they were the ones that got picked on. And don't get me wrong, it was very, very funny to watch Chelsea get picked on, and I could go for it again anytime. But I do think like
you want to be picked on for the right reasons.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it does set a bit of a wacky precedent, and that was before they've taken this step to sort of give the government more teeth in regulating football. So it's kind of scary. But hopefully they just use it to fuck with Chelsea.
It's interesting because football has gotten to the point where it's big enough that it like someone really fucking with football could be devastating to the local economy, like devastating. The way if any other big industry just disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
Like all the money and organization, which all starts with fans. So like if fans collectively turn their back on football, or like it makes sense. If football is one of Britain's biggest and best exports, and biggest and best industries. So like maybe that entire industry, like if there's a world where you can own multiple clubs in European competition, and then there's a world where you could just say, oh, my cousin's the one buying Arsenal, I own United. Pretty soon, a single family could own this whole league and could own and control this entire holy artifact that is the Premier League, that is British football. Like, it's almost like what if like China could buy like the Smithsonian's. Think about that. What if China could own the Declaration of Independence? Or what if China could buy the Lincoln Memorial? That is an extreme example, but that's sort of the conversation here is like, this is important enough to us that we need to put in protections to prevent some like money hijacking of cultural local heritage.
Yeah. And it's like, it's never been more at risk of that. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about the Radcliffe bid is this might be the last time that you see an English person buy a big club in England, because the British economy is one of the worst ones. Like, in spite of all the sanctions on Russia, there's only like two economies that are supposed to not grow this year, and it's the UK and Russia. And like, just being here on the ground in lots of small and not so small ways, like you notice like this is a country that is like really not sure how it's going to function financially for a while. And so,
unlike this one,
no, but like as much as everyone in the world is always like the economy's fucked. No, the economy's really fucked here. Like, everything is getting way more expensive, and no one's making any money. Like, and
that's the same.
It's rough here, and I think like I really wonder if this will be, because it's such a strange timing thing where the league, the British football, the Barclays Premier League, whatever you want to call it, that has never been more popular. So as that has skyrocketed in popularity, the locals' ability to have any control or say in it has diminished at the same crazy exponential rate. That's a recipe for people checking out. And there's, Manchester United was maybe the first one to do this, but that whole like FC United of Manchester thing where they built a local club kind of in the image of that. There's a similar one going on for Arsenal now. I might have sent you that link a while back.
Maybe I probably didn't click on it.
Where basically, they're in a much, this is like what FC United of Manchester was maybe 15, 20 years ago, I think, where they don't have their own ground yet. They are not even in the area of town that they want to be, but they have like people showing up in Arsenal jerseys. And like in some ways, I kind of, if it wasn't so far away from me, it's like impossible to get there. I would almost want to go and get involved in it, because it's like you show up with an Arsenal jersey on and you get like dollar pints, and it's like they're pulling the same kind of like stuff that you see in like Wrexham, because this is a team that I think like Wrexham would be a whale next to this team being a minnow. I think they're like pretty far down the league, and it's like it's owned by some guy who's like a contractor, you know.
Right.
But it's an interesting thought, you know. It's like we talked about before of, can you own an idea? And I think there's more and more of a movement within like local English clubs, because they do have such a great grassroots game of like championship and even below level teams that have a lot of support of like, maybe that's what they're more interested in. And on some level, the Big Six and those sorts of clubs, they're going to become a tourist destination or something, a TV show, you know.
Oh God,
that will not be televised here in the UK.
But it feels like then back to the government regulator, without that intervention, and the right intervention, not just intervention, like it needs to be very forward thinking for what we're used to seeing legislatively passed in any country, United States especially, but
Yeah.
in the UK too. I don't see any way that this ends without intervention, other than every Premier League club is owned by like the same like dirty half dozen like bad actors, like guys that do bad shit, guys that have billions because they've done bad shit, not because they've won the lottery.
Right.
And like, will that eventually rip football away from us, or will it be kind of like a cyclical thing where like, yeah, they ruin football, and for a time we go away from it, and that makes it maybe less desirable or less powerful of a thing to own, and then we flock back to it because, okay, all these people have fucked off because it doesn't really serve their purposes anymore.
Right.
Or I think I would be interested to talk to like a soccer futurist.
Like that would be a great guest to have on the pod.
Is that us? Are we the soccer futurists?
Yeah. Is this the only I'm sure we're not the only people thinking about this stuff, but you're right. You get so sucked into the day-to-day results of things that it's hard to think out this far. I mean, the thing that I'm churning through in the background as we have this conversation is like, it's not enough when you're a government regulator to have the best intentions. You have to actually have very, very, very smart rules and policies that you're putting in place, because even when you have the best intentions, there's always unintended consequences of the things that they put into place. And I could see there being realities where, in an effort to make things more fair or in an effort to do the right thing, they make it restrictive. It make it harder for money to come into the Premier League and into other, sort of levels of British football. And then this doomsday scenario that I've always had in the back of my mind, which is like, well, what if the money in China, or what if the money in some other developing market starts to totally dwarf the European leagues that have all the history and tradition and the laundry that I like, the shirts and all that? Like, what if those things just become dwarfed, and it becomes like, I don't know, like every 19-year-old Brazilian wants to go play for Guangzhou Evergrande because that's where the money is. I think that, something like that, where it's 5 dominoes away from happening, but that's the kind of stuff that you have to be careful about when you start passing big one-size-fits-all sort of regulations and whatnot. So
last bit before we move on to today's results really quick. What if you could just pass, Jeff Itkin, could pass one rule for the Premier League specifically, what rule would you implement? And it can't be something stupid like Arsenal always has to win, because like, come on, be realistic.
No, you know what I would love? I'm trying to think exactly what the rule would be, but it would be something along the lines of like, every fan gets to watch the games. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know exactly how you monster. Like, I don't know how exactly that goes into effect, but like, call me crazy, but I think for a reasonable amount of money, you should be able to watch the games live. You know, like
Cut
I think
to
that
Jeff Vitkin assassinated.
monster. What would yours be?
Mine is less realistic than yours. I think that's a fair and realistic thing to ask for. Mine would be every club that is owned by someone else, that person has to put up like essentially like a low cost stock option buy-in for all fans to get to 50+1. To get to that, like 50% of the club must be owned by the fans plus one fan. So that way, if all the fans are united against something the owner wants to do, they can overrule that decision.
Yeah,
that is the rule for all German clubs, and I think that while Germany lags behind in finance, a lot of the reason is because of that, because it's very fan-friendly league. It's maybe the most fan-friendly league. Like you can see matches for no money.
Yeah,
like it's. I think the German model.
Have stupid blackout rules.
I mean, they might. Who knows? But like, I think that the German model is largely the idealist model, and I'm still an idealist. And if I'm making this rule, I'm gonna do that. All right, Jeff. I think I just talked a lot. Or I think the whole point of that was also the Glazers have suggested they're not gonna sell, which I think is just a negotiating tactic to try and get another $1 billion out of the Qataris. Sure. And I think eventually they'll split the difference. But like, fuck all these people. Honestly, fuck all of them. All right, Jeff.
Oh, boom. Earlier tonight, I didn't get to watch it, but from what I followed in the highlights, I saw that we scored an Everton of goals. And that was good to see because we have been skidding in our form recently. And I think one thing that they did that was really, really smart is they started playing Trossard. They took him out of the left wing role and they played him as a Gabriel Jesus style number 9. And I think we needed that, especially against teams like Everton, where like they're going to sit back. They're going to have a very low disciplined block. And you need someone who can dribble past a couple guys and make some shit happen. And he seemed to do that. And I think it also prepares us nicely to play with the actual Gabriel Jesus, who's been back in training. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of him.
I wanted to say something about like if he's Jesus light, does that make him like an apostle or?
Oh man, you could have taken that in a much more offensive direction. But yes, yeah, totally. It makes him Paul.
Well, what direction would I take it? Jesus light.
I thought you were gonna name some other god and claim it. That's
good. Well, no, one fictional deity is the same as another in my mind.
Yeah, all even.
I was like, how could you get lighter than Jesus? If you read the Bible, he weighed like $110 wet.
He's the Holy Spirit, is what he is.
Yeah, from the. Sorry, I did a gesture just for the live viewers. And then, all right, so wait, was that FA Cup or was that league?
That was the league. And so now I
guess that was your game in hand. So now you're what? How many points? Clear of City are you?
5 ahead of City.
And that would put 8 ahead of us?
Correct, I believe, because you're 3 behind City, if I remember correctly.
And are we level on we're level on matches?
But you guys, I think, also have a game in hand now because of your cup craziness. So now you still have a game in hand, but you're 8 points behind us. But theoretically you could be 5.
Well,
Am I crazy?
If we have a game in hand, Jeff, I would argue that we're probably going to win it, even if we suck that day. Because springboarding off of the Newcastle result, where we didn't play that great, but we won, we played against West Ham today in the FA Cup, and we didn't play that great, and we won. We won 3-1. I think it was... Oh, fuck. Was it? Oh, so the first... Yeah.
Do you ended up scoring a goal at the end there?
Yeah.
I missed that.
I think it was Fred. So the first goal looked like a Wout Weghorst goal, but there is no such thing as a Wout Weghorst goal. So it was an own goal off of someone else's head. Then Garnacho completed the comeback. Oh, of course, he was just like, I was here. I'm saying during the Carabao Cup, at the end when everyone was like celebrating, Wout Weghorst just like knelt in front of the goal and the fans and just looked like he was about to cry. And like,
wow.
it's kind of, even he's not a great player, but it's like, kind of awesome to see somebody who really cares. Like,
he's like, this has been the hardest 29 days of my life.
No, but like he was in Turkey before, and before that he was at Burnley. So for him to like win something, to win a trophy with a great team in the Premier League, it's like he appreciates that, even if he's not like MUQ, as we like to say, Man United quality. He seems to be someone who's got the right attitude, which is a Erik ten Hag mandate at this point. But yes, we won 3-1. I want to confirm that was a Fred goal. I feel like it was.
While you're confirming that, I just did some Google confirmations, and it was actually a lack of confirmation. But I looked at the league table, and United are 11 points behind Arsenal.
But we do have the game
with a game in hand.
Right.
And you're 6 points behind City, but also with a game in hand. Because which actually does make more sense, because I was thinking, wait, there's no way you just win your game in hand and then you're tied with City, right? But yeah. But
so wait, Jeff, I'm gonna text you this name because I want you to have it in front of you.
Okay.
Look at who scored the own goal.
Aguero.
Also, wait. Yeah, it looks like Aguero, but like someone typoed.
Yeah.
And then Garnacho. By the way, I didn't know Garnacho had another last name, Ferreira. Alejandro Garnacho Ferreira.
Has Garnacho had a sniff of international football at all?
He almost went to the World Cup. He was one of the last 2 people cut for that last. I can't remember who it was that didn't go for fitness reasons, but like it was him and 1 other or 2 other players that were being for Argentina.
Okay, because I think he also has a Spanish passport, but that's not a thing, right?
No. I think he's Argentina.
I think he has
you might be right. So he was young enough that he hadn't declared, and so Argentina was courting him even for that. But you're right, he could be. I don't know if he's had.
He's initially played youth international football for Spain,
but then he did U20 for Argentina. I don't know if he would still have a chance to do the like one-time switch, or if that's over 21, you can do a one-time switch. International. He's still eligible to play for Spain and Argentina.
Interesting. I mean,
anyway, he's dope.
Yeah. Are you eating the Garnachos?
Yeah, I think he's going to be someone that Barcelona try to steal in like 3 or 4 years, honestly, and I worry about that. I worry about Barcelona wanting to take Garnacho and Ten Hag away from us. Or Madrid, either or, but probably Barcelona would make more sense for both. Because you've got little Messi regen, and you've got Dutch coach who plays football the way that Barcelona would probably be happy to play it.
I want to set a reminder in a few years to tell you that Garnacho is a Messi regen, and let's just see if he's have the same energy to that take.
He's a little Messi regen. It's up to him if he.
Okay, so he's kind of like the Holy Spirit in that way, where he's not like a Jesus. He's not, not the. Full...
He's like a Jesus light, I would call him.
Right. Oh yeah.
A Jesus, no calories.
Would you say, like, if you had to guess now, better or worse career than Gabriel Jesus, who's not Messi level, but also is like a.
How many goals has Jesus scored? 60. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of goals, that's like the one thing he's not good at, which does sort of set you back as a striker. But
this kid's got a bunch of goals for like his year 18 introduction to the first team, kind of in and out of the team season. He's scored like, I don't know, 6 goals, something like that. He's got a bunch of assists.
That's pretty good.
By the time he's, let's say, 22, 4 years from now.
Is he still 18? Jeez.
Yeah. Wow. He is 18, growing on 19. Growing on? All right. This isn't Meet the Theater Majors, okay? Give me a break.
That's my other podcast.
Meet the Theater Majors. Probably more interesting podcast than this one.
Nice.
All right. Do you anything else you want to talk about before we go back to our separate lives, our distinct and separate lives?
Ivan Toney should have been locked away before he scored the equalizer against us. That's all I want to say.
Okay. So he's into betting. Jeff's into making wine out of sour grapes.
And speaking of betting, I will do a plug for a different quality podcast. I've plugged it here before. I'm going to send you a link to it, so then iTunes podcast will always tell you that you should listen to it. But Whistleblower, the one on the corrupt referees in the NBA, is a really, really interesting one, even if you don't like the NBA much like me. And I think it's very relevant considering the absolutely terrible quality of officiating that we have in the Premier League. And I would not surprise me even in the slightest if some of the same dynamics that you see in that podcast are going on in the Premier League. And they are releasing new episodes now where basically people that were not willing to talk on the record before, because this is all stuff that happened relatively recently, these big scandals, now suddenly they are. And so that's my plug to say it's just a fantastic, really, really well done podcast. And there are amazing hoagie mouth Philadelphia accents in it, just everywhere. So enjoy.
So let me understand. You're driving our listenership into the hands and arms of another lover.
They barely ever put out podcasts, and when they do, they're good. So they're kind of like the opposite of us, where we put out podcasts consistently-ish, and they're good-ish.
Well, Jeff, agree to disagree.
Okay.
Later, buddy.
Bye.
Meet the suckers. Meet the